Hello, my name is Ben Gates. I'm the Director of Campus Ministry here at IPFW and also at Indiana Tech down the street. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to another edition of our Campus Ministry Business Forum Luncheons. And today we have the privilege of hosting Curtis Smith. Curtis is a little bit of a local celebrity, I guess. He is currently the Community Outreach Director for the Parkview Foundation, but of course for many years was on local television as a meteorologist and has taken a number of trips overseas that have been chronicled on local television, where he's had the opportunity to both share his faith and also show the world to Fort Wayne. So we're excited to have him speaking with our students today. They've been eating lunch, and now I'd like to just turn the program over to Curtis.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Curtis Smith. I'm the Director of Community Outreach at Parkview Health. But if you know me, you probably know me from television. Did all of you, or how many of you are from this area, from Northeast Indiana? Most of you. So how many of you have seen me on TV? Half of you? Okay. So I was the chief meteorologist at 21 Alive, the ABC station here in Fort Wayne, for 21 years, and left television about 2 years ago. May 1st will be 2 years at Parkview for a whole new career shift. So at Ben's prompting, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about my career path and my story, and then we can do some Q&A. I'll start in high school, which is an unusual place to start your career talk for, I think, a lot of people, but my career has been very unusual. It started in high school. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in a suburb called Germantown, and my high school was enormous. I had 650 people in my class, and we were the smallest of the 4 classes, so we had about 3,000 kids in our high school. And because of that, our sports teams were amazing. Our football team would win the state championship all the time. Our baseball team won the national championship one of the years I was there. And so in the late 70s, my school's answer to the problem of they couldn't get enough people in to watch our sports teams was to create a television station, which would be weird today. In the late 70s, it was unheard of. But that's what they did. They created a television station that broadcast games out to the public on local cable systems. Well, a professor came along and said to the administration, I don't think you guys realize what you've done here. You've created this incredible learning opportunity for students, and we should turn this into a 24/7, fully functioning television station and let the kids run it and let them learn how to do television. So they did. So by the time I came along in the mid-'80s, I was going to a high school that owned and operated a fully functioning broadcast out to the public television station. So one of our morning announcements my sophomore year said, hey, if you are interested in television, come to this room after class, after school today and hear about it. So I did, and the next thing you know, I was on TV. I was on live television when I was 15, and it was the only thing I ever did. I never worked at McDonald's or anything else. The only paycheck I ever received prior to 2 years ago was from a television station. It was a very, looking back and talking to other people, it was a very strange high school experience. It felt normal at the time because you just go through your own life and you live it every day and it feels normal, but it seems like no one else has ever had this kind of a high school experience. So it was kind of like being an athlete. I got recruited to college, and I actually signed a letter of intent to go to a college sitting in my high school television studio. So it was very strange. And I was on, they owned a television station. I was on TV through college, and then after college as well. And so I graduated from college in May. I got married in September of that year, and this is '94. And I was doing sports on television, and had some interest in the weather. I'd taken a couple classes, but I really wanted to do sports on TV. So I applied for a sports job in Louisiana, and this was a small little town, Alexandria, Louisiana. It's right in the middle of the state, and they had a weekend weather opening, or weekend sports opening rather, paying $13,500 a year. So, you know, not a lot of money. And I applied for it, and there were about 150 people that applied for it, and I came in second, which sounds great, but you still don't get the job when you come in second. So about a month later, the news director called me back and said, hey, we really liked your sports tape, and now our weekend weather girl is leaving. Would you consider coming down here and doing the weather? And I told him no. I said, no, I'm not interested in doing that. And he said, well, look, I know from the past experience talking to you that you just got married. I'm offering you full-time on air, because at that time through college and then right out of college, I was doing kind of part-time on air, part-time behind the camera. That's usually how you have to break into television. And he said, I'm offering you a full-time on air job. And I said, okay, if you promise to help me get back into sports, I'll come do the weather. And he totally lied to me and said he would help me, and he did not. I got down there and realized instantly he had no intention of helping me get back into sports. He wanted to progress me in weather, and he did just that. About 4 months after being there, he bumped me up to the main weather job. So I was doing the Monday through Friday, 5, 6, and 11. I was off the weekends, and was really enjoying the weather. I liked it a lot. I found it fascinating, and the TV thing was going pretty well. And so we did not like Louisiana, though. My wife and I really wanted to, it was too hot for us. We needed to be somewhere else. So we kind of decided that, and right after we decided that we wanted to leave Louisiana, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our oldest child, who graduates from college in May. And so we kind of decided, we were very happy, of course, but we thought, great, now we got to stay in Louisiana 9 months, have this baby, and then let's get out of here. And the week we found out she was pregnant, I got a call from a girl I'd worked with in Illinois right out of college, who was in Fort Wayne. And she called me and said, there's a guy here doing the weather. His name's Jay Walker. Some of you in the room may remember Jay Walker. And Jay was kind of transitioning out of television into radio, and it created this weekend weather opening at Channel 21 in Fort Wayne. Well, I told her, you know, we're probably not interested. We just found out that my wife's pregnant, and she said, you should really look into it. Fort Wayne's a great place, and it's a good station and all of that. So this will shock and awe some of you who can't imagine life without the internet. But at that time, we didn't really know where Fort Wayne was. So I literally walked out to the car, got my atlas out, opened up my atlas, started it on the Indiana page, started at Evansville, and started looking for Fort Wayne. And that's how you had to look things up in the 90s. And so we found Fort Wayne. It was obviously very far north, and we thought, well, that's the kind of change we're looking for. So in television, in the old days, you would send a resume tape. Now you probably have a YouTube page, or you have got something downloadable that you can send in an email. But I sent a resume tape up here, and they flew me up for an interview, and I did an interview. And in television, when you do an interview, they have you do an audition. So I literally stood in front of a green screen and did a weathercast right in front of all the management. And it seemed to go pretty well. And afterwards, I was sitting in the news director's office, and he was giving me all the normal spiel about, oh, we like you, we're looking at other people, we'll let you know what we're going to do. And I just thought, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to shoot straight with this guy. And I said, well, my wife is pregnant. We just found out. I need to know pretty soon. And so he kind of looked up, and he goes, all right, we'll offer you the job. And I said, well, I didn't mean that soon. I meant, like, you know, just tell me in the next week or so. So we moved up to Fort Wayne. That was October of '95. We thought we would be here a year or two, and that was 23 years ago. And again, about 6 months into my time at 21, they bumped me up to the main shows and made me the chief meteorologist. And so there I was, this kid, just a year or two out of college, doing the main shows with all these adults. I remember looking at the set, and everyone else was in their 40s and 50s, and I just felt like they were at 90, you know, and it just was strange to be doing TV with adults. I'd always done it with people my own age. And we fell in love with Fort Wayne, and my life at 21 was incredible. I was there 21 years. The first 19 years were amazing. I loved it. It was wonderful. I did a lot of fun things, goofy things on TV. I grew a beard. Some of you may remember that. I did this Twitter thing. If any of you went to high school around the area, I had a hashtag call it off situation that got out of hand. And so life was just great, and my wife and I now have 3 sons, love Fort Wayne and all of that. A couple of years ago, the station was sold, and it was my first real taste of the real world, the business world. And it went pretty much as you might expect. The new owners came in and told us that they were going to infuse more money into the station, hire new people, do more stuff in the community, do great work. And that was all a lie. They took money away, they fired people, they cut jobs, they centralized positions that weren't on air to their hub in Illinois, and they told us to do less in the community, and that included for me stopping mission trips. I had done mission trips a few years back. When things were just going along fine, I don't want to call it a midlife crisis, but I had this moment where I thought, okay, I'm doing the weather on TV every day and it's fun and people are enjoying it and all of that, but I wanted to do something that had greater value and more meaning for eternity. And along that time, someone came to me, the people who own HearCare Audiology in Fort Wayne, and they said, we're starting a nonprofit branch of our audiology clinic, and we're going to do mission trips, and we want you to do mission trips with us on TV, and we want you to report on them and be the face of these trips. And I laughed at them. I thought that was absurd. It would never happen. But our management said yes, and so the next thing you know, I was standing in Jerusalem on a mission trip on TV, and I remember when it finally hit me, like how unbelievable this was the last day of our trip. I was doing a stand-up on camera to close the reporting of the trip, and I opened my Bible and read my Bible standing in Jerusalem while on TV in Fort Wayne, and it was just this pinch me moment. I couldn't believe what had happened in my life. So all of that was before the sale of the station. The station was sold. They changed everything. They came to me and said no more mission trips, and then they were firing people. Other people, my best friends at the station decided to leave. Melissa Long, who had been there forever doing the news, she retired early, and Tommy Schegler left and went to Parkview. And so I got into this really dark spot in my life for a good 6 months where I just hated my job. I got in the car every day and prayed that God would do something and deliver me out of it and open some door. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I felt like I was being very unreasonable with God, saying, we don't want to leave Fort Wayne. TV is the only skill I have. It's the only job I've ever done. So what do you got for me? And I had this chance meeting, or what I thought at the time was a chance meeting, with a guy named Rick Henby. He's the COO of Parkview. Parkview is the largest employer in Northeast Indiana. We have 11,300 co-workers now, and this guy's the COO, so he's the number 2 guy in the whole system. And he came up to me. I was emceeing an event at the Miro Center on the Parkview campus, and he came up to me and started talking to me, and I looked at him like he was crazy, and it took me a few seconds to get it. And I finally said, are you talking to me about a job? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm holding a microphone. I'm in the Miro Center. You can't talk to me about a job. And he sent me an email around midnight that night on a Saturday and said, I'd love chatting with you. Let's connect more and talk about what a job at Parkview could look like. And so after a couple discussions, we kind of zeroed in on one of his ideas, which was he wanted Parkview to be a better community partner and corporate citizen. And he said, we've got to connect better with churches and schools and senior services and YMCAs and all these organizations doing incredible work, and we've got to help them, support them as best we can. And I want to start this whole new community outreach department. I want you to be the head of it. And I had never dreamt of working for a hospital. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It seemed completely out of the blue to me. And but it was exactly what I needed to hear, because I was really a pretty miserable person to be around, I think, the last 6 months at the station. You guys probably have a sense of this. School is probably the same way for you now that a job becomes, it can really dominate your life. And if it's not going well, all other parts of your life suffer. And that was the case for me. So I needed a big change, and so I took a risk and left television, and that was May 1st of 16. So May 1st will be 2 years at Parkview, and I've been the director of community outreach ever since, and it's gone unbelievably well. I love Parkview. I love what we get to do in the community. I love that I don't have to be ashamed of or hide my faith at all. I can share that wherever I go on behalf of Parkview. There's no qualms about that at all. And I get to do a lot of fun things, but I get to do a lot of meaningful things and invest into groups and people who are doing stuff in the area. So that's kind of my story. Was that 10 or 15 minutes, Ben? If you guys have any questions, we can certainly have a discussion right now about anything, television, Parkview, the marketplace.
I'll get started if that's okay. I appreciate that you talked about difficulties and how they can lead to advancement, because often it's great stories sometimes have parts of them that nobody wants to risk sharing, and it's important to share that. Can you tell us if you experienced any, I don't mean doubt with respect to whether what you believed with your faith was there, but if you experienced doubts with respect to just your Christian life and how you dealt with that during that darker period?
I never had doubt in God. I had doubt in myself all the time. I still do. I had doubt in my own faith. How am I being faithful to God? Am I doing the right thing? The other thing that's always hard to tell, you guys are all old enough to have experienced this, it's hard to tell when God is prompting you and when something else is coming along that you should pass up. And so it seemed like a good thing, but I really relied on wise counsel in my life to kind of vet it and make sure that I was headed in the right direction. So yeah, it was a very difficult time, but I never really lost faith in God through that. I did have faith issues in myself, and I had questions about myself whether I could do anything else. When all you've ever done is one thing, it's hard to think about doing something else. So literally since I was 15, I'd only done television. And I didn't feel like I understood the real world, the business world, very well, and wasn't sure I could make that transition smoothly. But so far, so good. It's gone pretty well.
Who are the main communities you've been working with in this new division at Parkview?
Yeah, there is no set boundary. So we basically have a footprint that covers almost all of Northeast Indiana. So basically any of those types of organizations, churches, schools, YMCAs, senior services. And then I have a fifth bucket that I call other, because there are just a lot of organizations that don't fit neatly in that. But since May 1st, I've connected with or deepened a partnership with 189 organizations. But we go up to LaGrange County, we go out to Wabash and Warsaw, Huntington, Noble, and then of course Allen County as well. So we're all over. And then even in counties where we don't have a hospital like Steuben and DeKalb, we've got a lot of doctors' offices there. We have a group called PPG, which is Parkview Physicians Group, and about 10 years ago there were 50 of them. Now there are over 800 providers in all of these counties, so we're all over the place. In Northwest Ohio too, so I'm in my car a lot. I drive a lot. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know what
These partnerships, what is your exact goal that you're wanting to acquire by partnering with somebody?
Well, I mean, it sounds maybe a little too Pollyannic, but honestly, our goal is just to help them. I mean, if it comes back and it helps us and it creates some loyalty to Parkview and it gets the message out about the fact that we're a not-for-profit hospital, that we invest back into the community, that we care about people, great. I mean, that's good, but that's honestly not our main goal. It's really just to help the organization do whatever they're trying to do. So one of the things I like about my job is that I don't have to come to someone and say, here's the list of services we can help you with, here's what we can provide for you. I get to do it in reverse and say, what are you trying to accomplish? How can we help you? Is there a way that we can come alongside and partner with you? And it can look like 1,000 different things. So whatever they want to achieve, whatever they want to accomplish, if we like their message, if we like their goals and objectives, we'll support them and do our very best to partner with them.
So in a sort, you're using it as an advertising base for the facility, but are you also showing how you can help these groups, these partners, be healthier and live healthier?
Yeah, certainly. We care very much about health, and most people associate that first with physical health, but we state that we care about the health of the mind, body, and spirit. So we care about all parts of health, and that really is our main goal. So I guess there's a little bit of PR or advertising to it, but that really is not the main goal. It's kind of like Parkview Field, where the Tin Caps play, is a great example. Parkview caught a lot of flack when we gave a lot of money to do the naming rights of the baseball stadium. But that went away really quickly when people saw what happened. And so what happened was Parkview Field led to this renovation of downtown and this revitalization that's happened downtown. And it was kind of the first big thing that happened down there and the first linchpin for future growth. So that's an example of a way where we kind of indirectly help ourselves, but we're really just trying to help the community grow and do whatever is best for this community. So that really is our main purpose. And that's one of the things I've loved about Parkview and that I have seen in Parkview is that we have these incredible business leaders, these very sharp minds, but they're moral people and they're people that care about people. And you don't have to sacrifice that to be a good businessman or a good businesswoman. You can be really intelligent and you can be goal focused and be concerned about the bottom line, but not at the sacrifice of doing the right thing and investing into the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, back of the...
What would be a motivational message for us building our careers up in life now, from your experience?
You know, the number one thing I would tell you is to find something you love and to do something you love. I've seen it both sides now where I just love my job. And my job, my old job, my job as chief meteorologist was really taxing at times. If it was going to snow overnight, it meant I was spending the night at the station. Not sleeping there, I was up all night. I would be on air every 30 minutes for 20 straight hours, just on air. And if tornadoes were coming, there was the pressure of knowing this was life-threatening information. And so it was really intense, and at times it was really daunting and very physically taxing to be up and to not eat well, and it wasn't the most healthy job. But I absolutely loved it. I just completely loved it. It caused me, I kind of skipped over this part, back early in my career to go back and get a second degree. So I had a degree in communications, and then I got a degree in meteorology because I just wanted to fully understand everything I could about it. And I just loved the weather. So through the times that were great, on paper, it didn't look great. And I had friends and family who were like, I can't believe you go to work every day at 1:30 and don't get home till midnight, and doesn't that really suck? And I didn't think about it that way because I just loved what I was doing so much, and I thought it had great value. And then it was allowing me to open other doors to do mission trips and to do charity events and all kinds of stuff in town, which I thought was just doing good for the community. It ended up doing good for me because it created this other opening at Parkview. You know, they saw what I was doing in the community and they wanted to leverage that in connecting with all these other organizations. But yeah, that would be my number one piece of advice. Just do what you love, pursue it passionately and with your whole heart. And if it ends up not being right, at least in my case, it was really obvious that it was no longer right. And that was a hard thing to do. You guys all live in a generation and in a time where people don't stay in jobs all that long, so it might not seem strange to you or might not seem like that big of a deal. But to me, changing careers was a huge deal. I'm old enough that my parents never changed careers. You know, they stayed in a job forever and ever, and they worked one job. And so that's the model I had seen. And I never thought I would leave television. Once I got to Fort Wayne and liked it, I stopped. I kind of gave up on the dream that everyone in television has. Most people get into television, work in these really small, junky little markets with the hope of being in New York or Chicago or on the network. And I was the same way. But then I got to Fort Wayne and realized, what would I be leaving for? What would I be pursuing? I have a great church. My kids are in a good school. We're safe. The cost of living is good. We get all 4 seasons. Winter drags on a little too long, but you know, the weather is largely good here. And we have great friends. Why would I give all this up to go try to make a little more money and to be in a bigger market? And so I would just say, not only would I say do what you love, find what you love and do it as a career, but I would conversely say don't get caught up in what most people get caught up in, and that's thinking about the money. It's amazing how the next raise, the next promotion just does not bring happiness. It's just not about that. If you can do something you love and truly can invest yourself in, it's so much more meaningful than a few extra $1,000. I think you had a question there at the back of the table.
Okay, so in what ways have you worked with students on our campus through Parkview's community outreach?
You know, I have not connected much with IPFW. And most of what we do is based in elementary and high schools. So we don't do a ton with IPFW or other colleges outside of the sports arena. So Parkview Sports Medicine has a connection with IPFW. It has a connection with St. Francis too. I think Indiana Tech maybe as well. So that's the main way we connect with colleges, is through the sports programs. But I personally have not done much with IPFW.
Okay, so what would you like to see more of from us as students then?
Yeah, so this is a great example of what I'm saying. I have no idea. I don't know what IPFW students need. I don't know what matters to you. But if a group from IPFW came to me, I would listen. And I would say, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your goal? What is your objective? And if it met at all, if it aligned at all with anything that we're trying to do, I would explore how we could help, what that could look like partnership-wise. So yeah, I would be open to that for sure. But I am not intelligent enough to come to IPFW and say, here's what you need. I think that's very egotistical of organizations to do it that way, and that would not be my approach at all. I would want it to happen in reverse.
I've never had a chance to ask a meteorologist a question.
And it's
and
super
I've
exciting,
always
right,
wondered,
man?
I've got 2 questions, and one is more narrow.
Okay.
How do you do it? I mean, there's a green screen behind you, right? So my
Yeah.
temptation would be to look back and point at something, and there would be nothing there. So maybe you
Right.
could. And then my other longer range question is,
Okay.
what changes do you see happening in the television and broadcasting since you started, and
Oh my
and maybe
gosh.
the trajectory forward?
Yeah, okay. All right, so the green screen is tricky. Have any of you ever worked with a green screen or a blue screen? A couple of you? So the way it works is when I would sit there or stand there to do weather, I would stand in place, and just a couple feet behind me would be a blank green wall, and it would obviously stay blank and green the whole time. And surrounding it, everywhere I looked, were monitors. including in the teleprompter. The teleprompter gets turned off for weather. It's the only part of a newscast that doesn't have a script. So weather is all ad lib. And when I look forward, when I look left, right, off to my side, in any direction, all I see is what you see at home, me in front of a weather map. So the trick is to turn to the wall, but not to actually look at the wall. And then that's tricky enough at first. And then on top of that, everything is opposite. So when you point left, it's east. When you point right, it's west. And then the other trick that is really difficult that you get used to is you've got to find where you're talking about. Maybe it's a map of the United States and you got to find Indiana. Then maybe it's a map of Indiana and you got to find Northeast Indiana. Then maybe it's a map of our counties and you've got to find Wabash. And so you have to do a lot of thinking on the fly and a lot of, it's funny how your brain works when you're on television. Have any of you been on live TV before? It's funny, like you're talking on live TV and your brain is doing something else. So a lot of times you get caught up thinking about your hand and your placement and where you're pointing and all of that. And I remember times of being on air where I'm talking about the weather and my brain is thinking, you just pointed at the wrong thing, or this sentence isn't making any sense. You just used the wrong verb, and what are you talking about while you're still going on and on about the weather? It's funny how your brain can work like that when you're on television. So it is tricky, but after like a month or so, you get decent at it, and by the end, I could do it blindfolded. I could do it in my sleep. It was just all, muscle memory and being a creature of habit. The changes in television I saw, I feel like I couldn't even begin to capture them all. Just an incredible change because the world has changed so much. Even when I walked into the room, you were talking to some of your students and it sounded like they no longer do something in print, it's all online. So the newspaper industry has been dying / changing for a couple of decades. And television's kind of been the same thing now, where it's all turning to your webpage, your Twitter feed, your Instagram account. That's how you're connecting with people. And so many people get their news off Twitter. And so those changes are impacting television in a huge way. I read an article recently about Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, the late night war for ratings, and they're going through, the whole article was going through, here, this many people are watching, this is the rating, blah, 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 blah. And then the very last paragraph, they said, by the way, all of these numbers would have made Johnny Carson kill himself. This is a sliver of what used to happen late night in television. If these were the number of people that Johnny Carson had, he would have just quit. So it's dropped that much. And so you have to deal with the fact that there's this dwindling audience that doesn't want to just sit down in front of a television and connect with you. And when I was a kid and when some of us were younger, there were 3 or 4 stations. Now there's a couple hundred on top of Amazon and Netflix and Hulu and the internet and your phone. And so getting people to television, you've got to make it more and more attractive to get them. You've got to hook them somehow because they're just not naturally going to come to you. You could, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, you could just do anything on television and millions of people would watch because it was the only thing for them to come home and do. It was that or read a newspaper. And now that's not the case. And so that's the biggest change in the industry is the technology has just filtered the audience. It's splintered it into millions and millions of different avenues. And connecting with that audience is harder and harder all the time, and it's going to be harder and harder.
I'll stand over here so we don't need a chiropractor for these people. Curtis is right when he looks my way when he says, those of you that are older and remember.
Sorry,
50
Bob.
years as an employer and also as a professor here at IPFW. While I was teaching technical skills and so on, I was also concerned about the soft skills that my students would graduate with. Can you address the importance of soft skills?
Yeah, I just kind of like the changes in television, it would be hard for me to overstate the soft skills. I think they're vastly more important than the hard skills. the nuts and bolts of what we do in community outreach. Now, there are parts of the nuts and bolts at Parkview that are unbelievably important. What doctors and nurses do when they're operating on someone, when they're caring for someone who's in dire straits, is incredibly important. And the nuts and bolts and the hard skills are always important, but to me the soft skills are more important because we're all people. Everyone you ever deal with in any walk of life is going to be dealing with people. Maybe it's through a phone now, maybe it's not a face-to-face meeting, maybe it's a text and maybe it's an email, and you've got to be careful about how tone is interpreted. But the soft skills are, to me, more important because people want to be connected with. People want connection with other people. It's funny that this thing has connected us with more people than ever before, and yet so many people feel disconnected and feel like the soft skills are going away because all it is if you, like my 15-year-old, all he does is this all day, you know, and it's just, you have to work tooth and nail to get him to look up from his phone, and if you do, it's to go play the PlayStation. So those soft skills are eroding, but I think they're more and more important because as people, we all want that connection. And so how you value people, how you earn trust, and that is more valuable to me than what you're saying. It's how you're saying it, it's how you're connecting, it's investing into people, it's caring about them, loving them. And from my perspective, I would say it all kind of gets back to Christianity, just trying to be as Jesus-like as possible to people. Not judge them, love them where they are, and being an example of him to them, to me, is more important than any hard skill I've ever learned. I think that's why the weather things went so well, is I found ways to connect with people. Anyone, I mean, even 20 years ago, there were 1,000 people who could give you the weather. The reason that I was the most popular person giving the weather on TV was because I found little ways to connect with people. I found ways to make it fun. When high school kids started getting on Twitter and caring about whether schools were being delayed or canceled, every other weatherman in town would occasionally answer a question or ignore them a lot. I stated a goal. I'm gonna answer every question I ever get on Twitter. I will not ignore any question ever. And I'm gonna be funny about it. I'm gonna try to connect with them in a way that they wanna be connected with. And if they call me fam, I'll call them fam. And I'll be goofy. And it worked. Because even 15-year-olds wanna be connected with and wanna feel like their opinion matters, they're valuable. And so when you relate to them on their level, that's what they feel. And my message was not different. My forecast was never much different than anybody on 15 or 33s. It was a little different, and I would say a little better, but but the reason that I every year was named favorite weathercaster was not because my forecast was great, it was because I was a goofball on TV and people liked that and they felt connected to. Yeah.
Do you feel that the soft?
I think Ben wants you to wait for that microphone.
Do you feel that the soft skills actually played a very good role when you transitioned, did your 190 or 90-degree job change from what you did prior to now?
Yeah, no, I think they're critical. I think they're enormous. And I think the fact that I can walk into a room and a lot of people in Fort Wayne and around the area know who I am and have an assumption about me helps right off the bat because the soft skills have created that and they've kind of laid the path for that. But yeah, I think I really do. I'm not just saying, I think soft skills are more important than whatever the technical skill is that you need to learn to do your job. Whatever the nuts and bolts of your job are, to me, aren't as important as the soft skills.
So you stating that you didn't have the business skills, the soft skills filled that void.
So there are times when I walk into a room today, this happened yesterday, where I am in a room with a doctor, the head of our emergency department, and the president of one of our hospitals. these people could talk circles around me when it comes to healthcare. I've been in healthcare for almost 2 years, and I'm kind of on the fringe of healthcare. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to healthcare, but I enter every meeting knowing I'm going to listen well, I'm going to care about what they're talking about, I'm going to make good eye contact so they understand that I'm right there with them, feeling the situation, understanding the situation, and I'm going to just do my very best to understand it, but then talk about whatever I can do and help them and be as relatable as possible. But listening, eye contact, caring, being invested, not drifting, not thinking about, oh gosh, what do I have to do tonight? Boy, I'm really hungry. I'm always trying to stay in the moment. And it works. I'll be open and honest. If a doctor says to me something and I have no idea what he's talking about, I'm not afraid to say that. I'll say to him, I don't know what you're talking about, but here's what I do know, here's what we can do, here's how we can come alongside and help. And so I think people appreciate that level of honesty and that level of connection.
Thanks.
Yep.
You mentioned twice, Curtis, circumstances where you felt lied to. And
did I only mention 2?
Yeah, there were more. Well, I'll give you a chance to maybe talk about more, but I was thinking, could you talk a little bit about the importance of integrity in the marketplace and just in the different roles we fill there? Yeah,
I think integrity is obviously critical. The way I have felt about it on the receiving end has shaped the way that I try to live it on the giving end. I think the concept of forgiveness is vital. It's central to being a Christian. I think it's a great thing to strive for, both in giving it and understanding that you're going to have to rely on it sometimes. But in the business world, I don't know how prevalent it is. I don't know if it exists, because if you don't act with integrity, I feel like you're going to lose that person forever. They have other choices. If we don't act with integrity, they can go to Lutheran. IU Health is coming into the marketplace. Parkview is not the only hospital and health system in Northeast Indiana. So if we don't act with integrity, if I lie to someone, I don't expect them to forgive me. I expect that to be a deal breaker. So integrity is vital. And there's just too many choices. There are too many other options. If you don't act with integrity, why would anybody stick around? And I think it's that central to what we do. So yeah, again, that gets back to kind of the honesty, where if somebody comes to us and says, here's what we're doing, I won't, and it just doesn't align, I'm not going to hem and haw about it. I'm going to say, I know that you're passionate about what you're doing, but that doesn't fit our mission. That's not one of our goals, and we're not going to help you. Because I would rather just be honest and open about it than string them along at all.
Yep. Whenever I talk to someone who works at Parkview, they always are glowing about working at Parkview. And I have not done a survey of all 11,000 employees.
Right.
So it could be totally anecdotal. But do you think leadership has an effect directly on how people feel about their job? Or do you think it is the job themselves, such that is the structure of Parkview's leadership playing a direct role in why people who I talk to seem to be satisfied? Or do you find satisfaction in your job independent of who's running the show at the job? Can I ask a second question? How does a nonprofit you think perhaps treat its employees different than perhaps a for-profit company does in your work experience?
Yeah, I would say there's a night and day difference, nonprofit to for-profit. And we have people in our health system who have worked for Lutheran, which is a for-profit hospital, and they have said that it's just as different can be. The value of leadership to me is paramount. So at Parkview, to me, it literally starts with our CEO. Our CEO is Mike Packnett. He's a Christian. He is a guy who genuinely cares about people. He's the kind of guy who is very powerful and has a lot of money, and yet cares about an assistant, cares about the lowest entry-level employee we have, and will go have lunch with them and go hang out with them and truly listen to them. And he's very sharp, and so he pours his wisdom and his integrity into our other senior leaders, then they pour it down, and so we have all these different levels of leadership, and I do feel like it just trickles down. For me, it has been, I guess I would say I went through a lot of my career not understanding the value of leadership, not understanding how important it was, because I just kind of operated in a little weather silo. And I didn't really care that other parts of the station weren't going well, and if a leader wasn't doing the best job, it's fine, I'm just over here in my silo doing the weather. When the silo started to break down and bad leadership impacted me, I really realized how important leadership was. And so for me, it's been a complete 180. And I do glow about Parkview, and we kind of joke about it sometimes at Parkview. We call the campus the Emerald City, and we all talk about Parkview pride, but it's true and it's real, and it's cheesy, but it's true because my leaders actually care about me, and it's the first time I've ever felt that, and I didn't realize how much I missed that, how not ever having that. But my leader right now, so Rick Henvey, our COO, created my job and hired me, and for the first year or so I reported directly to him, and I had a dotted line to a woman named Sue Anger, who is our Chief Experience Officer, and she was formerly the president of one of our hospitals here in Allen County. Now that's flip-flopped, so I report directly to Sue and dotted line to Rick. And Sue is the type of leader who you can't imagine how busy her schedule is. She's going from 6 to 8 every day. I mean, she starts at 6 in the morning, works into the evening, meets with doctors constantly. She is as busy as possible, and yet she'll send me a text asking me how my son's basketball team went, how their game went over the weekend, or we're gonna go, she invited me to a conference with her in a month, and we're gonna do a little personal side trip while we're out there. And she's the one that thought of that and set it up, and I just am blown away by how she actually takes time to do the personal stuff and to care about me, one of her many direct reports. So the value of leadership I just don't think can be overstated. I think it's just because I want to be connected to. I want to feel like what I'm doing is valuable. I want to feel like what I'm doing is bringing meaning to Parkview. And you can get some of that through the nuts and the bolts and the numbers and the goals, and you're trying to do this and great, you hit this, but a lot of that happens through the connection of other people, and especially from your leader. Yes, Bob?
I'm not paid by Parkview. But I did want to relate this one story that I heard of. After I retired from IPFW, several of my employees went to work for Parkview, and they're in higher level jobs. And one of them told me about a promotional gathering. It was actually a celebration. Several had been promoted to higher level positions. They invited all the supervisors, about 200, I think, and they had a choir. They held prayer over these gentlemen to make sure that they would be successful. I mean, that's the kind of leadership that you see where it succeeds, because as he said, they really care about people. And that's the thing I keep getting back from my former employees. And we get back to that integrity. When you are in trouble, when you have a difficult job, people don't think you're doing right and so on. If they know your character and they know your integrity, you get the pass until the real truth comes out. So you can know all the skills you want in business and communication and so on, but if you don't have the character and the integrity that everybody believes in, you're not going to be able to lead people. It's really important.
Bob, you want to come around and do some Parkview talks for me? Because that was perfect. Yeah, we are that kind of place, and we have these installation ceremonies and services where people are prayed over, and we take that very seriously. It's a real thing. Yep.
Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the major accomplishments or goals you were able to accomplish at your short time so far at Parkview?
Yeah, so what we, in connecting with 189 organizations, that exceeded what I was charged to do so far. And so that's been very rewarding, seeing all these different organizations that we've been able to help. The other part of my job that's that I don't talk about as much in public is that I'm over the patient advocates at the hospital. And the patient advocates are the people who deal with all the issues, complaints, grievances that come into the hospital. And so these are people who spend their days literally being yelled at and being cussed out, and have to have the patience of Job to do what they do. It's a really difficult job. We have seen that process standardized and centralized, and we are seeing those numbers go down. We're seeing people be happier with Parkview. And so that is one. A lot of what I do is very qualitative. It's hard to quantify because the partnerships look very different. Again, we don't do a cookie cutter thing where I go to Youth for Christ and I go to the YMCA and say, here's what we're offering you. Do either of you want it? This is what we can do. I go to both of them and say, what do you want? What are you trying to do? How can we help you? And so because of that, it's hard to always quantify that part of my job. It's a lot more qualitative. It's a lot more relationship building. The patient advocate work is all quantitative. There are hard numbers. I know exactly how many open cases they have. I know exactly how many times we've had to write off part of a bill because our service wasn't excellent. I know how many times we're being sued or threatened to be sued. And so those numbers have come down in the 2 years, and that is rewarding and good.
Just to follow up real quick, for some of the more in the community though, has there been any that you've seen that have particularly excited you personally?
In terms of organizations?
Yes, or the partnership, what you've done with them.
Wow. Man, I would hate to single a few out. Let me just say the YMCAs as a whole have been a really good partner because they're a similar structure to us. And so a lot of times that can be kind of a butting of heads. They're a large organization. They're a international organization. And they're not for profit. But a lot of people think of them in one way. So we're kind of that way. We're a big regional health system. We're not for profit, but a lot of people simply think of us as a hospital. They're an international organization, not for profit, but a lot of people simply think of them as a place to work out. They're a gym. And they're doing so much more, investing into youth. They have a Christian emphasis in our part of the country, at least. That's not true of every YMCA in the country, but that is true of our local YMCAs. And so they're investing into people, and again, looking to pour into health of mind, body, and spirit, not just being a gym and swim. That's what they always say. We're not just a gym and swim. And they are so much more than that. And so that is the kind of organization where in the past, it's not, I wouldn't say it's been oil and water, but it hasn't been completely smooth because they're not this little organization that needs $1,000 from us. Like some organization, if I give $1,000 to an organization, I've made their month. Like that is a huge thing for them. The Y is not looking for that. They're looking for true partnership in programming and coming together to help people. Sometimes it's shared services, sometimes it's shared space, sometimes it's creating new programs, sometimes it's doing something out of the box like healthy cooking classes that we do with them. We created this sports program that is going to lead to more kids exercising in summer when they're out of school and kind of unattached from schools, and they're going to get, the top performers are going to get to meet with Jalen Smith. He's going to come back from the Cowboys and spend the day with them. And so we get to motivate kids to live healthier lives. And so that's the partnership, maybe if I had to single one out, that I'm most excited about because it was It hasn't always gone perfectly well because we have two big, strong organizations that have had a little butting of the heads, and now we've kind of chipped away at that and smoothed that away. And that gets back to a lot of the soft skills. You know, it's about relationship building and coming alongside and saying, hey, you guys are trying to do this, we're trying to do this, we can come together, we can do this. Let's just meet and get to the same table and be on the same page.
Thank you. Time for about one more question.
It's a good final question.
Okay.
So what advice would you give to students that are going into organizational and nonprofit communications?
Well, I guess if it's a Christian organization, I would say keep those values central and be open and outward with them. And if it's not a Christian organization, I would say keep those values central and be as outward and open about them as you can possibly be. Again, I would say get into a job and try to figure out what it is you're doing. Try to figure out the goals and objectives and the strategy and all of that stuff for sure. But live your life with integrity. Live your life open and honestly and connect with people and care about people. I just find that being curious about people gets me a long way. When I come into a room, a lot of times everyone knows who I am and they like to ask me questions, and a lot of times it's about goofy stuff like beards and Twitter and old weather stuff. But I like to turn it around and I'm just naturally curious about them. What's your life like? What are you doing? How did you get to this meeting today? And so I would say care about people, have integrity, be loving and caring, and the other stuff you can figure out. You know, if you're a smart, curious go-getter who's willing to work hard, you'll figure out what the job is. You'll figure out that stuff. But if you don't have the people part, it's just not going to go well. It's just not. Yep.
Thanks for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I appreciate you showing up, and hopefully that wasn't too boring. So have a great day. Thanks.
Folles devenaient lourdes.